Bonjour, bonjour, and welcome to one of the best of episodes of Mission First, the podcast to learn from successful entrepreneurs changing the world for the better. In the episode 36, we discussed about the future of our economy and our planet with Timothée Parrique, PhD in economics, specializing in degrowth and post-growth theories. He published the book Ralentir ou Périr, Slow Down or Perish. What is the issue with GDP? This was something very insightful from your book. What's the hidden consequences behind the way we calculate GDP?
GDP is a poor measure of quality of life, as simple as that. It's a quantitative indicator. GDP measures basically monetary agitation. So every time you have euros moving around in your economy, GDP goes up. But it doesn't tell you whether these activities contributes to well-being. It doesn't tell you whose needs are being satisfied. If it's just like agitation within spheres of people that already have enough luxury goods and stuff like this, or it doesn't tell you if it's targeted growth for those households that are actually living in poverty. So GDP is a bit of a measuring activity in a quantitative way at the level of an entire economy. So it's pretty broad. What we should do is just accept the fact that GDP is a very specific indicator of monetary agitation, which can be used to measure certain things, but should not be taken as a compass for development. We should base development and the entire process of civilization and political governance, all of that, on several indicators of quality of life. Well-being, equality, happiness, autonomy at work, all of these things that really determine quality of life. I find that today we give too much importance to GDP. When you hear people like announcing their political program and countries, right, it's always about GDP. Even when we understand that we need to do something about the climate and ecology in general, then people will be like, yeah, I know we're just slowly cooking ourselves to death, but if we emit less emissions, that risk lowering GDP. And I'm like, who gives a shit? Like, yeah, that will lower this imaginary indicator we created in the 1930s. And so in the Excel sheet of a few national statisticians, yeah, GDP will go down. But on the other hand, the climate will stabilize and all the well-being risk associated to climate collapse will just disappear. And that's true development. That's true improvement. So today, I think it's a matter of just re-putting priority first, like social well-being, ecological sustainability. Those are like two primal goals for an economy. All the rest, GDP, inflation, all of that stuff, they're just means of reaching that. And we should not look at the finger when you're pointing to the moon. The moon is social well-being and ecological sustainability. The means is to make sure your economy is working well. Today we feel like obsessed with making the economy work well. It's like you bought a very expensive car because you wanted to go somewhere, but then you get too carried away about how cool that car is. And so you're focusing on the engine and you forget that you were actually driving somewhere. You're just looking at like how the engine runs. And now you're dedicating your life to making that engine runs as perfectly as possible, but you're not going in the right direction. And actually you're late for your meeting. So the purpose of getting the car in the first place has been forgotten. And now we're just completely obsessed about just how smoothly the engine runs, which is cool for economist nerds, but should definitely not be part of the collective imaginary.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how we have to turn around, actually, as you said, to go back in the right direction. I really love like the part about the GDP in your book when you explained like buying a drill has a positive impact on the GDP and the economy, but it has a negative impact if you actually share a drill with someone. What are some factors that are not taken into account in it? Because that was eye-opening reading for me in your book.
So GDP counts everything that has a price, and it counts it in proportion to the price it has. This is why for a very long time, neoclassical economists have defended that natural resources are completely unimportant to the economy because they represent such a small portion of national income, which is true. If you look at, for example, the national expense on fossil fuel, it's very tiny. If you look at, let's say, the percentage of GDP of the agricultural sector, you see that it's so tiny. But on the other hand, it seems a bit strange to argue that growing food is relatively unimportant. Because if we stop doing that, well, we won't run financial markets or marketing firms, or we won't build cars or anything else because we will all die of starvation. So somehow GDP is reflecting importance based on prices. Prices are being determined on markets, and historically we have gotten used to take natural resources for free and seeing nature as a whole as this kind of all-you-can-eat buffet, and like, oh, oil, cool, I'll take it, and sell it to whatever price is formed on the market, completely regardless of how important that resource is in the broader economy of nature. Same thing, let's say, for what we call ecosystem services. So let's say I buy a forest, I buy a chunk of the Amazon forest, let's say I buy whole of it. And I'm like, cool, I would love to just turn that into a golf. And so I'm like, I will turn that into a golf, and that's my private property. But what I don't take into account is all the ecosystem services that the Amazon forest was providing, including sequestration and absorption of greenhouse gases, so the kind of lungs of the planet. Also, the fact that it hosts a diversity of species with this kind of biodiversity wealth. Also, the fact that it filtrates water and do all kind of thing, retain fertile soil. So I'm going to destroy all of that, and I'm going to turn it into a golf. And maybe I will just, open it to access to a few rich people. And in terms of GDP, I have created value because the Amazon forest, it sells nothing. So therefore, it has no value compared to my golf course, which I can tell you is lucrative. And so in GDP terms, when you look at the process of destroying and turning the entire Amazon forest into a golf course for rich people, that rings value creation. That rings progress. That rings, a performant economy, which is a bit nonsensical, because if we were to turn every single forest into golf course, I think we'll soon realize that there's going to be a problem. And so GDP is very bad at including the ecological, and it's even worse at including the social that is non-monetary. I give you one example that for me was kind of shocking, because as many people in France, we grew up as kids, and Wednesday afternoon or Saturday, we would go to the local soccer club or playing badminton or whatnot. We learned sport. And I've realized that all of these clubs, amateur clubs, they are run by volunteers. Volunteer work is not included in GDP. It's considered worthless. So if you wanted, let's say, to boost GDP growth in France, you would say all of these amateur clubs, you'd be like, guys, stop running this club to teach soccer to kids and go work at McDonald's. You'll create more added value. But then all of a sudden, the ability, the service for kids to be able to go and learn sports, meet other people would disappear. Imagine the social wealth that will be destroyed if we were to do this. Imagine also the kind of productivity-related skills. So all the team building experience we had at kids, learning how to play sports together. Now you come to a company and you have people that have never done something together. So we're all completely we don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to listen to others. So we're also losing a tremendous amount of usable skills. So in the same way that in my example, we destroy the Amazon rainforest, it looks like good GDP, but it destroys a lot of wealth. Here, if we destroy all of the sports club, we somehow will gain in GDP, because all of the coaches of these sports clubs that go and work for Starbucks and McDonald's now, they will just earn a wage and GDP will go up because they will sell Big Macs and macchiatos. But somehow in the process, we would have gotten collectively poorer.
If you found what you just listened to interesting, listen to the full episode with Timothée. You will learn what is the current problem with growth. Do we need growth to overcome inequality? What is green growth and why is it a myth? What is the difference between degrowth and recession? And in general, is growth something compatible with entrepreneurship and green entrepreneurship? Follow the link in the description for the full episode.